In my previous life, my best friend Shulin and I were admitted to the hospital to give birth at the same time. I fell into a coma due to a difficult labor. When I woke up, my doctor husband told me that the baby was stillborn at birth, and my uterus had been removed. I completely lost the chance to become a mother, and Ji Chen also thought I was no longer worthy of him, constantly mocking and ridiculing me. In my moment of despair, I agreed to the divorce. But then he turned around and made a grand proposal to the dean's daughter, Shu Lin, showing great affection for her newborn daughter. My mother couldn't bear the shock and suffered a heart attack, ending up in the emergency room. Shu Lin not only performed the surgery herself but also helped me cover the huge medical bills after my mother passed away. For this, I was deeply grateful and willingly stayed at her home as a nanny, taking care of her entire family with all my heart. 20 years later, when the child was diagnosed with uremia, they abandoned her in the hospital to die. Under my questioning, I finally learned that I was the child's biological mother. It was Shu Lin who had taken my child and ruined my life back then. Suppressing the bitterness in my heart, I agreed to donate. But they performed the surgery on me without anesthesia. In the end, I was literally tortured to death on the operating table. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Shu Lin left her postpartum confinement. She was holding the child, her face beaming with joy. Su Xin, you must come to my daughter's full-month celebration tomorrow. Even though everyone says you're unlucky, that you brought misfortune to your own child, you're my best friend, and I won't look down on you. Having children is a matter of luck. You just don't have the fortune to be a mother. But don't worry, I'll have my daughter call you godmother in the future. Just remember to give her a big red envelope. I opened my eyes to the sound of Shu Lin's smug voice. She was standing by my hospital bed, holding her child as if showing off. Her splattering saliva sprayed all over my face, and her triumphant expression stung my eyes even more. Xin, don't be too sad. If you want to blame anyone, blame your own bad luck. You say your Ji Chen is so strong and healthy, so how come you can't even give him a child? If you ask me, you shouldn't cling to Ji Chen anymore. Just divorce him quickly. He's so talented and handsome, and he became the head of the department at such a young age. If he spends his whole life with you and doesn't even have a child of his own, won't he become a laughingstock? Even the doctors and nurses in the hospital kept nodding in agreement. That's right, sister-in-law. Director Ji treats you so well. You really should think more about him, even though the one-child policy is in place now. If you can't even have one child, what will you do when you get old? Recalling my past life, when Ji Chen and Shu Lin used a scalpel to cut through my skin and flesh bit by bit without anesthesia, the heart-wrenching pain made me tremble uncontrollably. I remained silent, only staring at Shu Lin with eyes full of hatred. She grew increasingly nervous under my icy gaze, instinctively pulling the child's swaddling blanket tighter and turning sideways with a guarded expression. Why are you looking at me like that? I didn't say anything wrong. As a woman, being unable to bear children is a major taboo, even if you and Ji Chen grew up together. So what? Without a child, he'll still look down on you. I ignored her taunts and simply reached out toward the child in her arms. Is this really your child? Let me have a look. Shu Lin's face turned pale as she tightly shielded the child in her arms, covering her so much that she burst into loud cries. What are you doing? Can't have your own, so you want to take mine. I'm telling you, this is a hospital. If you dare lay a finger on my daughter, don't blame me for being rude to you. A hen that can't lay eggs will be abandoned sooner or later. Hearing the child's cry, my heart felt as if pierced by needles, and my hand, which had been raised in mid-air, suddenly froze. She gave me a disdainful glare, then ran out of the hospital room holding the child. Her steps were so hurried that she knocked over chairs and a kettle, not even bothering to pick them up. I only feel an unbearable heartache. It's clearly my child, yet she snatched him away. In my previous life, I was separated from my daughter for a full 20 years, and until my death, I never got to hear her call me Mom with my own ears. Why did they take my child and then cause me to die so miserably? I couldn't hold back my tears. And with a sudden surge of strength from who knows where, I leaped out of bed and grabbed her. Under her panicked gaze, I said with a stern face and a sharp tone, Lin, let me see the child." As soon as the words left my mouth, I was violently shoved aside. The immense force made it almost impossible for me to stand, and I stumbled to the ground in a disheveled heap. I lifted my tear-blurred eyes, meeting Ji Chen's cold gaze directly. He looked down at me from his lofty position, letting out a disdainful snort. "Su Xin, have you had enough of this commotion? This is a hospital. If you want to go crazy, go home and do it. Don't embarrass me here. Now the whole hospital knows you can't have children. Aren't you ashamed enough? How could you be so vicious as to try to take Lin's daughter? Have you no shame at all?" My already weak body was slammed with great force, and now it hurt as if every bone was about to fall apart. I gritted my teeth and held on stubbornly, lifting my head to look at the man I had loved for 8 years. Ji Chen and I grew up together. Back then, he wanted to study medicine, but his family was too poor, and his mother threatened to take her own life to force him into a technical school. I was the one who voluntarily gave up my studies, pulled some strings to find a job in a factory, and worked myself to the bone every day just to earn a little extra for his tuition. After he graduated, I even quit my job on my own initiative to take care of everything at home for him, so he could focus on his work. Back in school, my grades were clearly much better than his. After we got married, he thought I was foolish and criticized me for not having read enough books, always looking down on me in his words. He even said more than once that we had nothing in common and wanted a divorce. I never took it to heart, only devoted myself wholeheartedly to him. But it wasn't until the moment I died that I realized he had long grown tired of me. Without his tacit consent, Lin wouldn't have dared to openly replace my child. Even my uterus was deliberately removed by him, all to force me into a divorce. In my previous life, I did as he wished and, in despair, agreed to the divorce. I never expected that when he proposed to Lin, my mother happened to witness it. My mother was so angry that she had a heart attack on the spot. By the time I received the news and rushed to the hospital, she had already passed away. I knelt at the entrance of the emergency room, crying uncontrollably, but Lin told me with a look of condescension, "I performed the surgery for your mother as soon as possible. It's just her own bad luck that she died on the operating table. Since we're such good friends, I'll cover the treatment cost for you first. You'll have to find a way to pay me back." I was deeply moved and knelt before her for a long time. Afterward, in order to repay the huge medical expenses, I became her unpaid nanny, and this went on for 20 years. I endured the heartache, watching her and Ji Chen show affection in front of me. All the dirty and tiring work was left for me to do, yet she never allowed me to take care of her daughter, Ji Yuanan. I didn't think much of it at the time, assuming she was just uneasy about leaving her child with an outsider. Now I understand. She was afraid that the bond between Anan and me, as flesh and blood, would reveal something unusual. It wasn't until she and Ji Chen had their own child that she finally entrusted Ji Yuanan to me. But from then on, she and Ji Chen began to treat Anan with cold indifference. Even if she just ate an extra piece of meat, it would lead to a severe beating. At such a young age, she was covered in bruises every day and couldn't even get enough to eat. I was the only one in the whole family who cared for her, secretly saving food to give to her, so she wouldn't starve to death. At the age of 20, Ji Yuanan was diagnosed with uremia. Lin and Ji Chen showed no concern, simply abandoning her in the hospital to await death. Unable to bear it, I questioned them on why they could be so cruel, refusing to save their own biological daughter. It was only then that they told me with utter disdain that Ji Yuanan was actually my daughter. In that moment, I felt as if struck by lightning, stunned and unable to believe it. After a brief silence, I suppressed the heartache and only asked them to arrange the surgery as soon as possible to transplant my kidney to Anan. To my surprise, they were so cruel that they didn't even give me anesthesia before putting me on the operating table. Ji Chen, with a mocking smile, personally cut open my flesh. The intense pain nearly made me pass out, but I forced myself to stay awake and dared not close my eyes. My Anan, I want to live to reunite with her and make up for the 20 years of missing maternal love. But in the end, I couldn't hold on, and I breathed my last in despair and resentment. Before I died, My ears were filled with the mocking voices of Ji Chen and Shu Lin. Stupid as a pig, you deserve to be deceived so badly, you've slaved away for us your whole life. How does it feel to learn the truth just before you die? Who told you to act so high and mighty back then, looking down on us who didn't do as well as you? In the end, you were still played for a fool by us. At that moment, I felt nothing but overwhelming hatred and heart-wrenching pain. How dare they manipulate my life, exploit my trust, and humiliate and hurt me so wantonly? Fortunately, heaven has eyes, allowing me to be reborn on the day before I was discharged from the hospital. This time, I will never let them bully me again. I suppressed the blood rising in my throat and struggled to stand up. The past affection has already faded, and all that remains in my gaze toward him is coldness. Ji Chen, you deliberately removed my uterus, making me unable to have children. Isn't that just to force me into a divorce? Upon hearing this, Ji Chen's expression changed. He stumbled back a few steps, his voice tinged with a hint of trembling. You don't talk nonsense. When did I ever say I wanted a divorce with you? A mocking smile curled at the corner of my lips. Is that so? So you don't plan on divorcing me? Ji Chen steadied himself, his gaze toward me turning strange. You're utterly shameless. I only married you out of consideration for our childhood friendship. Who knew you'd be so unlucky, finally getting pregnant, only to give birth to a stillborn child? Forget about that. But now you don't even have a uterus anymore. I haven't looked down on you. Yet you still question me in front of so many people. You're only doing this to test my sincerity. What kind of person do you think Ji Chen, would I do something so treacherous? He spoke with righteous indignation, wearing a pained and reflective expression. As if he had truly suffered an immense injustice, even the aunties who were watching couldn't help but speak up for him. Indeed, Director Ji is truly pitiful. Not only having to bear the pain of losing a child but also being questioned by his own wife like this. Speaking of which, among the 3 unfilial acts, having no descendants is the greatest. Even if Director Ji really wants a divorce, it's only natural. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Having known him for many years, I never expected him to be so shameless, lying through your teeth, twisting the truth to such an extent. I only hate myself for being blind and foolish. For not seeing through his true face all these years. Ji Chen made no attempt to hide his disgust, his tone growing even more impatient. What's so funny? You've completely humiliated me, and you still have the nerve to smile. I think I need to seriously consider whether this marriage is worth maintaining any longer. Alright, how about this? After you're discharged from the hospital, go stay at your mom's place for a while. We can both take this opportunity to cool off. I nodded silently in agreement, perhaps thinking he had everything under control. A flicker of smug satisfaction flashed in Ji Chen's eyes. I let out a light laugh, staring straight into his eyes, and spoke word by word. However, before being discharged, I'd like to ask Director Ji. You said my child was stillborn, so where is he now? Since I woke up, I haven't seen my own child. Even if it was stillborn, you should at least take me to see him so I can feel at ease. In my previous life, it wasn't until I took my last breath that I found out Shu Lin was never pregnant at all. She had made up her mind from the very beginning to take my husband and child away from me. What's laughable is that I was completely unaware, and even with my big belly, I personally cooked her favorite meals every day and delivered them to the hospital. What I thought was a deep friendship was nothing but a complete trap from start to finish. Sure enough, as soon as I asked, Ji Chen instantly panicked. He tried his best to conceal his guilt, even his tone weakened a bit. Are you out of your mind? It's been so long. The child has long been laid to rest. I was just afraid you'd be heartbroken, so I didn't dare let you see. Don't be ungrateful. Thinking back to my previous life, I trusted him and naively believed that he truly didn't let me see the child because he was afraid I'd be heartbroken. Now, I refused to believe even a single word. However, the onlookers were utterly convinced, all praising Ji Chen for his meticulous attention to detail. Seeing Ji Chen grow increasingly smug, I shifted the focus of the conversation and pointed at Shu Lin, demanding, I also want to ask, Dr. Shu and I have the same due date, but she isn't even married. Whose child is hers? Really, probably not expecting me to suddenly change the subject, Ji Chen froze in place. Shu Lin hugged the child in her arms tightly, her face flushed bright red, yet she couldn't manage to utter a single word. Just as everyone was stunned, someone suddenly stepped forward from the crowd. It was the hospital's new intern doctor, Xie Han. He said in front of everyone, looking embarrassed, "The child is mine. Originally, we didn't want others to know. Shu and I dated for a while, but we broke up a long time ago because we weren't compatible. She has a kind heart and said that no matter what, the life in her belly is still a life, even if it means being looked down upon. She insisted on giving birth." I just glanced at him, and my heart instantly sank. In his previous life, after Ji Chen was promoted to dean, it was he who took over the director's position. I had seen him more than once. In front of Ji Chen and Shu Lin, he was like an obedient dog, at their beck and call. With his intervention, Ji Chen only froze for a moment before returning to his usual indifference. He pushed me, his face full of impatience. "Stop being so suspicious all day long. Go and handle the discharge procedures, then get back to your mother's house. You're an embarrassment," holding back my tears. I grabbed his sleeve with my other hand. "Ji Chen, if you want to drive me away, that's fine, but you have to return the money to me first." Ji Chen was taken aback, his entire face darkening. "What madness are you spouting now? When have I ever owed you money? As a department head, would I owe money to a factory worker like you? How ridiculous." Seeing his indignant expression, I smiled faintly and pulled out a cloth bundle from my chest, inside which was a stack of letters. During the years Ji Chen was studying out of town, whenever he ran out of money, he would write to me asking me to send him some. Fortunately, I was naive enough back then to carefully wrap every letter he sent and keep it in the small bag I carried with me. I unfolded the yellowed letter and read it word by word. "This is the one you wrote when you first started school, asking me to send you 200 yuan for living expenses. This is the one where you asked me for $1,000 to pay your tuition, and this one, where you said you needed $300 to treat your teachers and classmates to a meal." I read them out one by one, and Ji Chen's face grew paler and paler. He pulled me over abruptly, gritting his teeth and whispering, "Enough. Do you really think this isn't embarrassing enough? I know, I'll find a way to pay you back later." I've heard this countless times before, and each time, I would happily tell him he didn't need to pay me back. But now, I just coldly grabbed him by the collar. "Ji Chen, I just had surgery and can't work. You haven't contributed a single penny to the household in years. How am I supposed to live if you don't pay it back? I'll come to the hospital every day and make a scene, so everyone can see what kind of face you, the head of the department, really have." Ji Chen, flushed with anger and shame, reached out to push me away. I sneered and kicked him in the calf. He gasped in pain and was about to start cursing, but I wiped my tears and fell to the ground. The aunties watching couldn't stand it any longer and quickly helped me up. "Director Ji, she is your wife after all. How could you treat her like this? After all, she just gave birth and needs to nourish her body. You can't possibly give her no money at all, can you?" Ji Chen's face turned pale and then flushed, the veins on his forehead bulging. After a long while, he gritted his teeth, glared at me fiercely, took out a wad of money from his bag, and threw it in my face. "This is the salary I just received this month, untouched. I'll give it all to you, and I'll figure out the rest myself. Take the money and get out of here. I must have had the worst luck in 8 lifetimes to marry someone like you." I wiped away my tears and hurriedly picked up all the money. After counting it carefully, it came to exactly 800 yuan, not much, but at least it's the first sum of money I've managed to get from Ji Chen in these past few years. From now on, I will reclaim everything he owes me, one by one. After completing the discharge procedures, I packed up my belongings and prepared to leave the hospital. As I passed by Ji Chen's office, through the slightly ajar door, I saw him holding Shu Lin in his arms as if no one else was around. I quietly walked to the door, and from inside came Ji Chen's deliberately lowered voice. "Don't be angry, it's just 800 yuan, right? Haven't I given you all my salary to spend over these years? Doesn't that prove my sincerity?" Shu Lin snorted coldly and said sarcastically, "So what? She's your wife after all. with just a few words from her. You obediently hand over the money to her. You're only nice to me to please my dad. That's 800 yuan, enough for me to buy 2 outfits. Doesn't Su Xin's mother often come to our hospital to get medicine because of her poor health? Here's what we'll do. Next time, you switch her medication when she has a heart attack. I'll be in charge of the rescue. After all, no one will know whether I actually save her or not. We'll just say she didn't make it, and I'll cover the medical expenses. I'm going to make her pay me back 100 times over. Jiyu Chen picked her up with a delighted expression on his face. Lingling is so clever. Let's do as you say. I felt a chill run through my entire body. I used to think Jiyu Chen was just naturally aloof, always lukewarm toward me and my mother. But I never imagined he could be so heartless, to the point of not even sparing my mother. I wanted nothing more than to rush in and perish together with them. But I couldn't. In my previous life, they were ruthless, and the torment akin to 1,000 cuts still sends shivers down my spine. Of course, I won't let them off the hook, but I also can't put myself in a dangerous situation. Suppressing the hatred, I left without looking back. When I got home, my mom was busy in the kitchen. Seeing me come in, she looked surprised. Shinshin, why did you come back by yourself? Mom made Jiyu Chen's favorite braised pork and was just about to take it to the hospital and also check on you. Before she could finish, I hugged her and started sobbing quietly. In my previous life, I rushed to the hospital but didn't even get to see her one last time. Seeing me cry so sadly, she said nothing, only lovingly stroked my head. I held her hand, afraid of upsetting her, and stammered as I spoke, "Mom, I want to divorce Jiyu Chen." She understood instantly, trembling as she pushed me away and walked back to her room on her own. A moment later, she took out a small box and placed it in my hands. "It's for the best to leave. Back then, both your dad and I thought he wasn't reliable. But you were so devoted to him that we couldn't bring ourselves to stop you. Your dad was afraid you'd suffer, so before he passed away, he left this money, saying that if you ever felt wronged, you could come home and would take care of you." I held back my heartache and forced a faint smile. Fortunately, everything is still in time. Tomorrow, all of this will come to an end. I want Jiyu Chen and Shu Lin to receive the punishment they deserve. And I will take my mother and daughter and leave completely, heading toward my own brilliant future. When I arrived at Shu Lin's house as promised the next day, her large courtyard was already filled with people. Jiyu Chen was standing side by side with her at the door, greeting the guests, looking as if they were the married couple. When he saw me, Jiyu Chen's face looked somewhat awkward, and his eyes avoided looking at me. "Shinshin, Shulin is your best friend. Since you're not in good health, I took the liberty of coming to help her. I hope you don't mind." I smiled faintly. Of course I didn't mind. After all, after today, the true faces of you two scumbags will be exposed to the public. Shulin was holding the child, beaming with joy as she accepted the blessings from the guests. When she glanced at me, the corner of her mouth curled into a disdainful smile. "Su Xin, since you can't have children anyway, out of pity for you, I'll let my daughter call you godmother from now on. Have you prepared the red envelope?" I smiled and nodded, taking out the large red envelope I had prepared long ago from my bag. Shu Lin's eyes lit up. She handed the child to Jiyu Chen and quickly walked toward me. She eagerly reached out to take it, but to her surprise, I grabbed her hand instead. Shu Lin screamed in panic. "Su Xin, what do you want to do? I think you've gone mad after your own child died, haven't you?" She swung her bag at me, and the sharp metal hardware left a long bloody scratch on my face. I didn't care at all, just reached out and grabbed the hem of her clothes. "Shu Lin, you say this child is yours, then show me your belly. You just gave birth, it's impossible to recover so quickly. Let us all see if this child was really born by you." Ignoring her resistance, I lifted my hand and pulled up the hem of her clothes. The next second, I felt as if struck by lightning, frozen in place. On Shu Lin's stomach, there is a winding, ferocious scar, exactly the same as the one I have from my C-section. Yet, just before my death in my previous life, she personally told me that she had never been pregnant. She had only pretended to give birth in order to take my child. My mind went completely blank, and even my lips began to tremble. How is this possible? Ji Chen walked over in a furious rage and slapped me to the ground. He didn't even bother to look at me, only tenderly shielding Shu Lin in his arms. Ignoring my embarrassment, he softly comforted her for a long time before finally looking down at me from above. Su Xin, what's gotten into you? Lin Lin kindly invited you to the full moon banquet, and out of jealousy, you want to ruin her, is that it? Shu Lin's father, the hospital director, heard the commotion and rushed over. After learning what had happened, he was so angry that he kicked me in the stomach. If it weren't for the fact that you're Dr. Gu's wife, I would have beaten you to death today. Who do you think you are, daring to lift my daughter's clothes? Ji Chen, your wife looks like a rabid dog. Has she been triggered and developed a mental illness? Coincidentally, I know an expert. You should send her to a mental hospital right away. He cursed loudly and kicked me a few more times. I curled up in pain, while Ji Chen just watched me coldly. The people around were all just watching the commotion. No one willing to get involved. Indeed, most of the people here today are colleagues from the hospital. Shu Lin's father is the director, and Ji Chen has just been promoted to department head. No one is willing to offend them for the sake of a stranger like me. Despair washed over me like a tide, and I couldn't help but break down in tears. You're lying. Shu Lin isn't pregnant at all. She stole my child and now she's trying to take my husband too. I don't want a man like Ji Chen anymore. But you have to give me back my child. The heart-wrenching cries only brought me more punches and kicks. Shu Zhengqing kicked and hit me with near madness. You still dare to talk nonsense? You saw the scar on my daughter's stomach. You've ruined her innocence. Do you believe I'll beat you to death? Just as I was helpless, someone in the crowd suddenly spoke up, trembling. Wait, I just looked at Shu Lin's stomach. That scar must be from a long time ago, right? I looked up and couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. The speaker was a leading figure in the medical field, Professor Zhong Hanyu. In my previous life, I was too grief-stricken to attend today's banquet. So I didn't know he was present. Now that he speaks up, it naturally stirs up a lot of discussion among the crowd. No way, Shu Lin usually seems quite proper. How could she have had a cesarean section before? I just looked too. Her stomach is very flat. She really doesn't look like someone who just gave birth. Back then, Dr. Gu said it was a stillbirth, but none of us saw it. Could it really be that she stole Su Xin's child? It's hard to say. Usually, Dr. Shu is quite close to Director Gu at the hospital. Could there be some improper relationship between them? Poor Su Xin has been kept in the dark all along. Not only was her child taken away, but she also ended up unable to have children anymore. How tragic. Amidst the discussions of the crowd, Shu Zhengqing's face turned dark with anger. Clenching his fists and stiffening his neck, he roared at Professor Zhong, "Mind your own damn business," as her father. Wouldn't I know if my daughter has ever given birth? Don't think that just because you hold the title of professor, you can talk nonsense. Get out of here. You're not welcome in our home. Shu Zhengqing thought that as soon as he gave the order to leave, someone would naturally escort Professor Zhong out. To his surprise, however, no one paid him any attention this time. He was probably so angry that he lost his head. Forgetting that many of the people present had once been students of Professor Zhong, even if they wanted to curry favor with him, no one would dare lay a hand on their own mentor. Professor Zhong wasn't angry either. He just calmly looked at me. "Miss Su, you say this child is yours. Do you have any evidence?" I shook my head, and the light in my eyes instantly dimmed. I can't exactly say I was reborn, can I? Even if I did, people would just think I'm crazy. Professor Zhong nodded, looking at me thoughtfully. "Have you heard of paternity testing? If you're willing, I can try to arrange one for you, but it will take quite a long time. In this day and age, from sampling to getting the results of a paternity test, it would take at least a month or more. Over such a long period, I have witnessed the tactics of Ji Chen and Shu Lin. If they manage to hide the child, I might never see her again in my lifetime. I can't afford to wait, nor do I dare to." Seeing my silence, Shu Lin pushed through the crowd, rushed up to me, and began shouting while pointing at my nose. "Su Xin, you shameless wretch. You don't even dare to take a paternity test, yet you have the nerve to claim this child is yours. Do you know that kidnapping someone else's child is a crime? If you don't leave now, I'll call the police. I raised my eyes and met her haughty gaze without a trace of fear. Fine, go ahead and call the police. When they arrive, I'll prove that this is my child. As soon as the words were spoken, someone in the crowd immediately shouted about calling the police. Shu Lin panicked instantly, forcing a faint smile as she reached out to stop those people. I was just saying, such a small matter doesn't need to be made into a big deal. After all, Su Xin is my best friend. How could I bear to see her go to jail? To show her closeness to me, she deliberately linked her arm with mine. I coldly shook off her hand, staring at her with a forced smile. Who said we're close friends? This is a serious matter of child abduction. How could we not call the police? I turned around and knelt before everyone, wearing a look of grievance. Please, help me. That's my child, the one I carried for 10 months and gave birth to. How dare they snatch him away so brazenly? I'd rather die than let this go. I cried my heart out, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, someone couldn't bear to see me like this and, wiping their own tears, helped me up. Don't be so heartbroken. We'll go report this to the police right away. If it really is your child, we'll make sure justice is served for you. With that, someone stepped out the door, but as soon as she reached the door, she was stopped by Jiyu Chen and Xu Zhengqing, both wearing gloomy expressions. Shu Lin's entire face flushed bright red as she slammed the table in a fit of rage, shouting, "Let's see who dares to call the police. My father is the dean. If you offend me, don't even think about getting promoted in the future." Threatened by her like this, those who had been clamoring to call the police hesitated. Seeing that no one dared to move, Shu Lin laughed arrogantly. Her gaze toward me was filled with contempt. "Su Xin, you dare to make a scene and demand to call the police without any evidence. Today, I won't let you do it. What can you do about it?" Watching her arrogant and domineering demeanor, my vision went dark for a moment. My daughter was carelessly thrown onto the table by them, and at that moment, she began to cry with heart-wrenching sobs. Even though she was just a step away, I couldn't hold her in my arms. I couldn't hold back any longer and covered my eyes, weeping bitterly. The next second, the courtyard gate was suddenly pushed open. A group of uniformed police officers surged in. Jiyu Chen and Xu Zhengqing frantically reached out to stop them but failed. Shu Lin stared at the scene in disbelief, her entire face turning as red as a pig's liver. She was trembling all over, yet she still forced herself to remain calm. "Who called the police? Do you not want to keep your jobs? I'll have my dad fire all of you tomorrow. What's the big deal about the police? You're trespassing on private property. I'm going to report you." But this time, no one responded to her. Everyone's gaze towards her was icy cold. Shu Lin was so angry she almost spat blood, waving her arms in an attempt to drive the police out. Unexpectedly, she was instead pinned to the ground, unable to move. During the standoff, my mother stepped into the courtyard, under my astonished gaze. She gave me a gentle smile. "Xin, as long as Mom is here, I won't let anyone bully you. Tell the police everything. No matter how powerful the Shu family is, there's no need to be afraid." I was nearly moved to tears and nodded firmly at her. Turning around to look at Shu Lin, whose eyes were bloodshot, I smiled calmly. "Shu Lin, I already inquired yesterday. Both you and Xie Han have type A blood, while both Jiyu Chen and I have type O blood. If you claim the child is yours, then as long as we check the child's blood type, we'll know whose child she really is, won't we?" Shu Lin's face instantly turned deathly pale. She must never have expected that a factory worker like me would think of using blood type to prove the child is mine, but she probably forgot. If I hadn't voluntarily dropped out of school to support Jiyu Chen's education, with my grades, my education level might not have been lower than theirs. Soon, someone snapped out of it and started shouting about getting the child's blood tested. Shu Lin struggled desperately, trying to stop them. "No one is allowed to go. No one is allowed. Whoever dares to take my daughter for a blood test will never have to come to work at this hospital again." No one paid her any attention, and soon someone came running from the hospital with the equipment. Half an hour later, the blood test results came out. The arrogance on Shu Lin's face completely vanished. She lowered her head dejectedly, not saying a word. I took the blood test report, my fingers trembling so much I could barely hold the thin piece of paper. after just one glance. I threw the report and smashed it into Shulin's face. You wanted evidence, didn't you? Then tell me, how did you and Xiehan, both with type A blood, give birth to a child with type O blood? I lunged at Jiyu Chen again, tearing at him like a madwoman. And you, she's your own daughter. How could you bear to separate her from me at such a young age? You don't deserve to be her father. Get out. Jiyu Chen's entire face was scratched to a bloody pulp by me, and he fell to the ground in a disheveled mess. He trembled with fear, looking at me pleadingly. Even his voice carried a hint of a sob. Shinshin, please listen to me. All of this was forced on me by Shulin and her father. I didn't want to do it either. They used the position of department head to coerce and bribe me, saying that as long as I was willing to marry that worthless Shulin, they would guarantee I could become the dean in the future. I was forced into it for the sake of giving my daughter a better life. Xu Zhengqing, who had originally looked utterly defeated and was sitting on the ground in despair, could no longer sit still upon hearing Jiyu Chen's accusations. He jumped up and kicked Jiyu Chen in the ribs, sending him flying. If it weren't for you shamelessly clinging to my daughter and promising to divorce and marry her, how could my daughter have taken a liking to you? So what if she had a child before? Do you think someone like you is worthy of her? I'll beat you to death, you shameless freeloader. Xu Zhengqing grabbed Jiyu Chen by the collar and began punching him in the face. Jiyu Chen's entire face was swollen and red, and it took him a moment to react before he started wrestling with Xu Zhengqing. Shulin also cried and begged me to let her go. Shinshin, for the sake of our long friendship as best friends, please spare me. I'll give the child back to you. Please don't send me to jail. Okay. The scene was chaotic, but I turned a deaf ear to it all. I only hurried over to my daughter, tears in my eyes as I gently picked her up. With trembling hands, I caressed her flushed little face and couldn't help but burst into tears. Fortunately, this time I managed to protect her in time. I will spend the rest of my life making up for the regrets of my past life, allowing her to grow up well in love. She will no longer suffer from hunger, nor will she endure any grievances. Most importantly, she will have a healthy body. My mother also walked over to me, reaching out to hold me in her arms. A moment later, I took my mother's hand, held my daughter in my arms, and prepared to leave. Seeing that I was about to leave, Jiyu Chen kicked Xu Zhengqing aside and threw himself at my feet, clinging to my leg. Shinshin, from now on, let's live well as a family. I promise I'll treat you and our child right. We've been together for so many years. You can't just give up on me like this. I was wrong. Shinshin, please forgive me, he cried with tears streaming down his face, yet it stirred not a shred of sympathy in me. I kicked him away in annoyance, my gaze as cold as if looking at a stranger. Jiyu Chen, if you had even a shred of affection for me, you would never have done such a thing. At this point, how do you still have the nerve to beg for my forgiveness? Get out of here now. Just seeing you makes me sick, probably not expecting me to be so heartless. He looked at me in disbelief, but he only froze for a moment before a confident smile bloomed on his face. Shinshin, you must still be angry with me for helping Shulin take the child away. It's okay, I'll punish her for you right now. Ignoring my indifference, he turned around, grabbed Shulin by the hair, and without a word, slapped her several times. Shulin screamed, her gaze filled with hatred as she looked at him. Jiyu Chen, how dare you hit me? If it weren't for me, would you even be qualified to become the director? How dare you lay a hand on me? They were wrestling in front of me. The two who had been deeply in love in their previous life now seemed eager to kill each other, watching their frenzied state. My heart remained completely calm. No matter what they do, I will never forgive them. I didn't look at them again, and left directly with my daughter and mother. I heard news about Jiyu Chen and Shulin again the day before I planned to leave with my mother and daughter. After I left that day, Shulin and her father, along with Jiyu Chen, tore into each other, each scrambling to blame the other. Many previously undisclosed matters were exposed in their mutual accusations. The hospital dismissed all three of them and conducted a thorough investigation. It was then discovered that during their years of service, they had colluded with each other, resorting to any means for money, and had even caused the deaths of many patients. I heard that on the day they were detained, many patients' family members blocked the entrance, throwing rotten vegetable leaves and rotten eggs at them. The once arrogant trio hung their heads, allowing themselves to be beaten and cursed like drowned dogs. During his detention, Ji Chen nearly exhausted all his savings to have someone bring me a message. He said he knew he was wrong and asked if I could bring the child to see him. I refused without a second thought. I no longer wanted to waste my energy on rotten people and rotten things, and I was about to start a new life. My father had left me a considerable sum of money, and after moving to a new city, I used it to start my own business. 20 years later, my company is about to go public, and my daughter has been raised well by me. I took her back to visit my father's grave. But as soon as we got out of the car, I unexpectedly ran into Ji Chen. He was squatting by the roadside, with a dirty begging bowl placed in front of him. He was dressed in rags, looking as old and frail as an 80-year-old man. The daughter couldn't bear to watch any longer and took a few loose bills from her bag, placing them in his bowl. Ji Chen lifted his clouded eyes and stared at her for a long time, perhaps recognizing that this was his daughter. Ji Chen became emotional and tried to rush over to grab her. "Anan, is that you? I'm your father, aren't I?" The daughter dodged away with a look of disgust, pinching her nose and glaring at him in displeasure. "I'm not Anan, but I have heard of you. You're Ji Chen, right?" Ji Chen nodded excitedly. "Since it's you, there's no need to give you this money." My daughter took the few loose bills from the bowl and pulled me away without looking back. Behind us came the sound of Ji Chen's heart-wrenching cries, but we both silently chose not to turn around. I knew that from then on, he would live in deep, heart-wrenching regret, but I felt not a shred of pity for him. That is the punishment he deserves, and my daughter and I will only live more brilliantly. The heavens have their cycles, and those who do evil will ultimately not escape their own retribution.